Tired of scientific jargon? Get the facts without the friction. This is Weekly Digested Science, where we translate the world's most significant peer-reviewed research into your weekly news update. For a trustworthy source of knowledge, hit like and subscribe.
So, every year as the calendar flips, we all do it. We get into this ritual.
Mm-hmm. The prediction game.
The prediction game, exactly.
Yeah.
We look at all the data, we try to read the tea leaves, and we ask that one big question. How do we actually know what's coming next?
And we really want to know. I mean, whether you're just planning your personal goals or, trying to figure out the next big shift in your industry.
Right. We are constantly trying to decode the future.
And that desire, that deep human need to decode, to get that single perfect answer, that is exactly what we are getting into today.
Okay.
So this deep dive isn't about us giving you one definitive forecast. Our mission is a bit different. It's to explore the tools, the mindsets that people use in what's called futuring and anticipation.
So we're looking at the how, not the what.
Precisely. We're drawing from fields like futures research, economic geography, to get at this really critical difference between trying to control the future versus, learning how to shape it, how to navigate the unknown.
Okay, let's unpack that tension right away then. Because our sources, they highlight two completely distinct, philosophical approaches to thinking about tomorrow.
Yeah, they do.
On one side, you have the mindset that treats the future like a puzzle. Something to be solved, something you can nail down to a specific number.
And we call that judgmental forecasting.
Judgmental forecasting.
Right. It's all about quantitative estimations. Is when an expert gives you a specific probability, a 75% chance of this happening, or a hard metric like a sales target.
And there's a specific structure to it.
Very specific structure. The key is it's a short time horizon, maybe 2 or 3 years out.
Right.
Specifically so you can verify the outcome, you can check if the forecaster was right.
And here's where it gets really interesting for me. What did the early research actually find about these forecasters? The ones trying to pin down that single point of data.
Well, the main finding was it was stunningly simple. Judgmental probability forecasters were often profoundly overconfident.
Overconfident.
Massively. So, for example, when they'd assess an event as having a 100% chance of happening, in reality, it happened far, far less than 100% of the time.
Wow.
It just highlights this inherent human flaw, We try to impose certainty on what is fundamentally uncertain.
And that raises a huge question for you listening. If the data shows that the people we pay to give us a single, precise answer are consistently overconfident, why do we keep relying on that model?
It's about comfort, isn't it?
It has to be. We prefer the illusion of a single, simple, maybe wrong answer over the complexity of multiple partially correct ones.
Absolutely. There's a psychological comfort there. And look, often an organizational need for accountability. If you pick one future, you know who to blame if it goes wrong.
Okay.
But that brings us really neatly to the alternative, scenario thinking. This is where we stop chasing that single number.
And you start to embrace the uncertainty.
You strategically embrace it.
Yeah.
Exactly. Scenario thinking is more about enhancing your anticipation in a broad brush way. You construct multiple plausible futures.
And not just the good ones.
Critically, not just the positive ones, the negative ones too. And the real value isn't some final report. It's the conversation it sparks.
So it's a process.
It's a learning experience for the whole organization. It forces leaders to do contingency planning, and it challenges their overconfidence in that one single best guess future. So to really get into that anticipatory mindset, we have to start with the philosophical foundation of futures studies. It's often boiled down to Amar's principles.
Okay, what are those?
1, futures can't be predicted. They can only be anticipated. 2, there isn't one future. There are several futures.
And the third one?
The third one is the call to action. We, as humans, can actively impact and shape the future.
And that idea of multiple futures, it gives us a really fantastic visual structure to help organize our thinking. It's called the futures cone.
The futures cone, right. If you imagine a cone opening up from this exact moment from the present and extending forward, it helps you map out all those alternatives. Well, at the widest, outermost part of the cone, you have possible futures. That's anything that could theoretically happen.
Anything at all.
Anything. Then, a little narrower, you have the plausible futures, what's considered realistic, given what we know about physics, technology, society.
Okay.
That's what the existing data and the trend lines suggest is most likely to happen.
And then right at the center.
The smallest, most strategic circle is the preferred futures. That's your target. That's the future you're actively trying to build with what you do today.
And you can't forget those lurking dangers, right? The wild cards.
The wild cards. Those massive, low probability, high impact events that just remind us that what's probable isn't the only thing that matters.
So even with a great visual like the cone, humans still fall into traps.
Constantly, which is why the sources stress developing something called futures consciousness.
Futures conscious.
It's basically about systematically building up your capacity to anticipate. It's like a mental vaccine against what are called the 5 pitfalls of misplaced futures.
5 pitfalls. So 5 ways we tend to screw up our thinking about tomorrow. Give us the highlights.
Okay, let's start with the first 2. Big mistake. Thinking the future is out there, way off on the horizon.
That's actually...
It's present here and now, in our plans, our hopes, the decisions we make every single second. And related to that is assuming the future is in one specific place when it's actually everywhere, omnipresent, as all these different alternatives at once.
That first one is so important. It's not a destination we're walking to. It's a force that is already shaping our present moment. What's the third pitfall?
Third is assuming the future is either all good or all bad.
Binary thinking.
Exactly. But real futures are messy. They're complex mixes of good and bad outcomes. Fourth is thinking the future is a static place.
Wait, I remember a weird phrase for this from the source material. Something like a collectivized person embodied in future space. What does that actually mean in plain English?
Yeah, it sounds dense. But it just means the future isn't a fixed landscape you walk towards. It's a social construction. We're all creating it and shaping it together.
So it's not something that happens to us.
Exactly. When you see it as a collectivized person, you realize you have agency. You're co-creating it with your actions and assumptions, not just waiting for it to arrive. It's about taking ownership.
That is a powerful reframing. Okay, and the final pitfall.
Over-relying on the futures cone by itself without considering the history cone.
The history cone.
We have to juxtapose our limited knowledge of the future with our knowledge of the past to get any real perspective. History is the raw material of possibility.
So if we can manage to avoid all 5 of those cognitive traps, we get to what's called futures literacy.
Right, which is the ability to actually use the future in a productive way right here in the present day.
So we've got the theory down. We can't predict. We can only anticipate. Let's see this in action. How do you go from drawing a cone on a whiteboard to, designing a whole new world, like a world after capitalism?
Well, our sources looked at exactly that. They took these potential post-capitalist worlds and initially sorted them into 4 big archetypes: grow, collapse, discipline, or transformation.
Okay.
And from that synthesis work, 3 major guiding images emerged for what systemic transformation could look like. And again, these aren't predictions. They are structured alternatives to force hard conversations today.
What's the first image?
The first is the circular commons. This one is really focused on sustainability and degrowth.
So a virtuous cycle.
A completely virtuous cycle. Goods are designed from the start for reuse. It's a closed-loop system, durable materials, compostable inputs. It basically redefines the whole concept of waste.
Okay, and the second one?
The second is the non-workers' paradise. This scenario is all about what happens with vast technological abundance, probably driven by automation, that just fundamentally shifts our focus away from traditional work.
I think people hear non-workers' paradise, and they just imagine everyone relaxing on a beach.
Mm-hmm.
But if work is no longer the central organizing principle of life, what happens to human purpose? Do we all become artists, or do we just get a lot of very bored people?
And that is the exact critical question these scenarios force us to ask. They suggest things like universal basic income, or UBI, could help the shift. But the real stress points become social. How do you find meaningful activity? How do you distribute resources fairly without tying them to labor?
Right.
It forces you to look at the ethical dimension of abundance.
And the third guiding image.
Tech-led abundance. This is where technological progress, maybe through AI or massive data optimization, it drives so much wealth that the cost of nearly everything approaches zero.
Zero marginal cost.
Zero marginal cost. The system doesn't collapse. It just becomes almost obsolete through its own extreme efficiency.
And we can see this same scenario approach used in more immediate contexts, right? Like healthcare.
Absolutely. Researchers looked at healthcare systems and focused on 2 huge uncertainties. The vocational spirit of the workforce.
Meaning, are they in it for the calling or for the paycheck?
Right. And the other uncertainty was the preferences of citizens.
So combining those variables, you get these skeleton scenarios. Tell us about the most challenging one, scenario 1, polarization of healthcare systems.
This one is brutal. It's brutal because it couples two negative trends. First, the citizens become polarized. You have a knowledgeable elite using personalized, proactive services, while large chunks of the population continue with poor health behaviors.
Okay, well, it's the second negative trend.
The healthcare workforce itself lacks that vocational spirit.
So they're more focused on compensation, on conditions.
Exactly, which leads to more disputes, more strikes, a high turnover of workers. So you're constantly losing institutional knowledge, even while you need new training to handle things like, say, the aftermath of a pandemic.
Wow.
It just paints a powerful picture of a system collapsing not from a lack of money, but from cultural and preferential strain. It's an outcome we should definitely be working to avoid.
And this technique is also used specifically to test resilience.
Yes, like in managing highly valuable geospatial data, they developed 4 scenarios based on 2 axes. Data openness, so open versus closed, and centralization, so centralized versus decentralized use.
And what do they do with these scenarios, like fine-tuned machinery or gated gardens?
They're not just static descriptions. They are actively tested against major crises, a pandemic maybe, or heavy cyber terrorism to assess their future's resilience.
Their ability to survive a shock.
Their ability to resist or survive it, yeah.
So let's take an example. In fine-tuned machinery, where the state and big companies centralize all the data and use it efficiently, how did that fare against a pandemic?
The resilience was initially assessed as good.
Okay, that makes sense.
Because that centralized machine could rapidly track infections, manage resources, issue top-down orders. But, and this is a critical caveat, the analysis also noted that if those top-down centralized measures failed to pay enough attention to people's social well-being and civil liberties, the human element, the resilience immediately dropped to just moderate.
So efficiency alone isn't enough.
Not even close. You have to factor in trust and social cohesion.
Yeah.
And if we connect all this scenario thinking to the really big picture, all this anticipation, it runs headfirst into a huge human and political barrier. Denial. We have this well-documented phenomenon of sleepwalking through climate catastrophe.
Sleepwalking is such a powerful term for it. And if denial isn't just one person closing their eyes, what does socially organized denial actually look like?
It describes this pervasive, ambivalent engagement with catastrophic futures. We do it through delay, through inaction, through a shared sense of unreality.
So the crisis is acknowledged, but daily life just continues as if it doesn't matter.
Precisely. And the key insight is that this is not just a personal cognitive failure. It's often a socially organized phenomenon.
So we have shared cultural structures, maybe professional identities, that encourage a kind of collective unfeeling, a kind of emotional dulling to keep things comfortable.
You've got it. Sociocultural contexts, like, what's normal to talk about at work, they can act as powerful masks. They prevent people from acknowledging their own contribution to a coming catastrophe.
We shield ourselves in a pathological condition of normalcy.
Yes, where just acknowledging the scale of the threat is often seen as being unprofessional or alarmist.
Which makes governing the future incredibly challenging, especially when we look at who is doing the futuring. Our sources highlight the growing influence of these knowledge-intensive business services, or KIBs.
Right, the big consulting and engineering firms, PwC, Arup, places like that. They're building future narratives and roadmaps for major clients, for governments.
And they're crucial, but
governance needs to move beyond these purely technocratic top-down models. And this is where we have to understand the difference between 2 powerful metaphors for how we see our planet. Spaceship Earth versus many-ship Earth.
Spaceship Earth. That's the idea that the planet is one single, closed, measurable system. It's predictable.
Right. You manage it by tinkering with the parameters, like a technician managing an engine.
It's a useful model.
It's an invaluable scientific model, but it can reinforce the idea that universal scientific knowledge seen from a distance, like from a satellite, is the only valid knowledge.
So it's many-ship Earth.
Many-ship Earth, on the other hand, acknowledges that this complex world has to be understood through multiple non-universal models that need deep local context.
So we're all sailing in different vessels on the same unpredictable sea.
Exactly. And that shift in perspective is absolutely critical for any technology or policy because decision-making in a crisis is so often effective.
It's rooted in trust and emotion, not just pure rationality.
A perfect tangible example is disaster response planning. Yes, Global scientific data about a hurricane is vital. But when the Tonga volcano erupted, or when La Soufrière in St. Vincent threatened, success depended just as much on localized knowledge.
Meaning,
Understanding who local communities actually trusted, which communication channels worked best. Maybe it's SMS advice services or local radio broadcasts. You have to adapt the response based on those effective local factors, not just the satellite imagery.
So effective governance means weaving that localized knowledge in alongside the global scientific data.
It has to.
So what does this all mean for us as we, head into another year? We've seen that traditional short-term prediction it's just fundamentally flawed by our own human overconfidence.
Yeah.
And that true resilient preparation requires a totally different kind of effort. It requires the deliberate, brave imagination of multiple plausible futures.
Mm-hmm. We have to overcome our deeply embedded psychological or social denial. And we have to ensure that a variety of voices, not just the technocrats and consultants, are shaping how we anticipate what's coming.
And that kind of strategic foresight, it leads us to one final necessary shift in how we think. It's about accountability across time.
It is. Our actions today have an extremely long temporal reach, much longer than our immediate ability to see or even feel the consequences.
And you're introducing a new concept here, the time print.
The time print, think of it as the temporal equivalent of the ecological footprint.
Okay.
It captures the long-term reach and impact of our decisions today. We might celebrate reducing our emissions this year, but the time print reminds us that the carbon we released last decade is still in the atmosphere for hundreds of years.
And the plastic we use today
Endures for centuries in the environment. It extends the shadow of our present actions far, far into the future.
That is a heavy but really necessary thought as we plan ahead.
So here is a provocative thought for you to mull over. As you set your goals, as you make decisions for your immediate future and the year ahead, consider what your own time print looks like. How does that knowledge that your economic, material, or technological choices will endure and impact future generations, how does that change the urgency and the nature of the decisions you make today?
Under the canopy where shadows play, crickets sing secrets at the edge of day. A bird calls sharp like a question in the